You think I wouldn't be surprised anymore by these Anbernic announcements, but they continue to surprise me just by the sheer amount they do. You might have remembered the most recent announcement, the Anbernic 40XX-V, which came out not too long ago, about like a week ago or so, and a couple weeks before that as we had the announcement. We already have the announcement for another device. Very similar device, but of a higher caliber. The Anbernic RG406V is the successor to the old 405V, which was a good enough device, but this new 406 is looking like to be a pretty competitive device. It is of a DMG style layout with dual analog sticks this time around, so just immensely more useful if you wanted to play 3D titles. A 4x3 display, which is awesome, especially if you're playing more of the classic generation systems that aren't any widescreen or anything like that. So it's pretty perfect for Game Boy, Game Boy Color, even N64, Super Nintendo, and NES. The more of those 4x3 systems would be way more comfortable on this display than it would on its similarly priced and spec'd sibling handheld that came out not too long ago, the RG556. Those two devices share very similar specs. Primarily, the most common and most important part is the SoC, the processor found in these devices. The T820 chipset has been just lauded as one of the most performant and affordable high-end emulation options, found also in the 556. That chipset has proven to be incredibly potent and has shown itself to be an incredibly potent SoC for emulation, being capable of emulating all the way up until the PS2 and N64 games flawlessly, being able to handle light Switch emulation, some 3DS, but it's kind of wonky, but only really expensive devices I've experienced tend to do 3DS well. This device is basically the DMG version of the 556. I loved the 556, but I initially didn't really understand it. It didn't make a lot of sense to me. But over time and more time with the device and using it more often, I learned that it was actually a decent device, and I actually ended up really liking it. The 406, I doubt I'm going to like it as much, especially because it is a DMG style layout. Granted, it does have dual analog sticks, so you can actually play most of the 3D titles this device is capable of playing, so you won't have the same problem that I do with the 40XX-V, just has only one analog stick and you can sort of play 3D titles. Not exactly the most comfortable way to play 3D titles, so just straight out, just don't recommend that device for that purpose. But the 406V does make an adequate, step forward in that aspect for making 3D games way more playable on this handheld, which is what the V or the 40 insert number line has been pretty good at doing in the past. Other than the T820 chipset found on this device, it also has a 4-inch IPS touchscreen that is 960 by 720, a 5G Wi-Fi module, supports 1080p output via the USB-C port, supports Bluetooth 5.0, has 8 gigabytes of RAM, and up to, I believe, 256 gigabytes of storage, and as low as 128 gigs, depending on the model you buy. Next, they have a 55 milliamp hour battery, up to 8 hours of battery life, which is pretty nice to see. 2 large angle, I don't know what that means in this instance, 3D Hall Effect joysticks, which is exceptionally nice to see. Lastly, it runs Android 13, which is also nice to see on these handhelds. We don't know any information about price quite yet, but if the 556 is anything to go by, it should be around $180 to $200 depending on the spec you buy, which honestly I think is a decent enough price point, but I've always been bothered by these super powerful DMG styled handhelds, especially if you take a look at my video that I made talking about the Neo DMG. I really am not a huge fan of that device. I think it is way overpowered for what it is, and while I agree less so with that aspect on this particular device, on the 406V, it still feels a little unnecessary considering the kind of in the form factor this device has. It is really nice to see a lot more power on this device, meaning you can play higher end systems way better, and you can play those 2D titles on those systems way better too. I can definitely see somebody seriously enjoying like New Super Mario Bros. Wii on this device amazingly. just because of how awesome the D-pad and face buttons tend to be on most of these Anbernic devices. But let's say you want to switch to playing Mario Sunshine. Not exactly a comfortable experience on a DMG-styled handheld, especially if you're committing to longer than maybe an hour or two of playtime. It begins to feel like just a weird decision if you're buying this for 3D titles. But the only reason why you would want a higher-end chipset in this is for 3D titles. But why would you buy this when you could just go out and buy right now the Anbernic 556 or the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro or the 5 and Mini when those come out? This device just doesn't make a huge amount of sense, especially considering, it has the T820 chipset. It's a good chipset, but the DMG layout sort of just drags it down for more just general purposed emulation. Most people, if I feel like you're buying this, you're buying it specifically for certain games, and you want a DMG style layout that can offer you enough performance to also emulate other systems that have, crazier games to play. Once again, this is another device that doesn't really shake up the emulation space all that much. It's just a revision to a line of handhelds that we've been getting for a few years now, and it's just another device out there in the sea of other devices that you can choose from. And frankly, it feels lazy, but it's just a revision, and it's kind of hard to hate it because it is a decent upgrade over the previous model. And if you like these kinds of handhelds, it is gonna be a really fun device. Just for me personally, I don't really see the appeal in DMG style layouts with high-end gaming chipsets that are more designed to emulate 3D titles that aren't exactly comfortable on these style handhelds. One last thing about the specs though I did forget to mention, it also comes in transparent black, beige white, and gray. Just thought I'd throw that out there, sort of forgot. And I'll be honest, I'm not a huge fan of these color options. I love being good transparent black, but beige white and gray are just kind of drab and lack whimsy, honestly. They're just not very fun colors. And sure, there's the splasher color with the rainbow, NES style, Super Nintendo styled buttons on the beige white or the gray. I forget which one. But frankly, it's not enough for me. It's very boring. It's very sterile. Circling back how this affects the greater emulation space, and yeah, it's just boring, I guess. It's just another handheld out there. I would love to hear what you guys think, though. Do you care about this device? Are you excited for it? And if you are excited, why are you excited? Because I sure lack any reasons to be excited about this at all. I would love to hear what you guys think about this down below. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. All the other social media garbage down below. And last but not least, have a wonderful day.